Hey everybody, this is Mike at Grain again. We figured it's a good time to do a little demonstration on how to shape your top planks and blend them into your rails. So we put the tops on this the other day. The top planks are kind of hanging off the board just a little bit, and we're going to start to blend them in here. So one thing to keep in mind is your top planks, when they go on the board, they're at their final thickness. They're basically about 1/4 of an inch. The only place we're going to be working them down and shaping is the outermost perimeter of the board, where they land on top of the lands that you created. So most of the time it's about 1.5 inches in from the rail. That's kind of the zone we're going to be blending. So this part of the board has already got its shape defined by the frame. Your rail down here is already basically shaped, at least the upper part, again defined by the frame. We're trying to blend these two places through this area. Okay, so what you're looking at here, obviously you've got your top planks, 1/4 of an inch thick. The next layer down to about here is your landing strips. Below that, these are all your bead and cove strips. So we're going to be pretty much blending this strip and these planks in about 1.5 inches. All right, so step one here is we're basically following the shape of the rail under the top plank. So whatever this angle is under the planks, we're going to continue that as a bevel straight up through your planks. So I like to start with a block plane, keeps the shape nice and fair, and we're just going to start working this corner down. And all the while, this little bevel should basically match the angle of the top part of the rail beneath it. Now we've got the planks are shaped in and they're matching the top part of the rail beneath it. So at this point we want to make sure we identify your planks, your landing strips, and your bead and cove strips. We don't want to shape into these rails down here. They've already been cleaned up and sanded. So we're just, again, working your top planks mostly. And if we cut a little bit into your landing strips, that's okay. But at this point, the board looks clean. This line is nice and sharp all the way around the board. We've got a nice distinct transition from the deck of the board into the rails of the board. And now we're going to start to create a secondary bevel that splits the difference. So we're going to take a block plane, kind of balance it right on the corner, and split the angle between the rail and the top planks. And we're going to just start taking that down. The reason we do bevels, it's easy to trace the progress and compare side to side and make sure you're doing things consistently. So when you have bevels, you have something to visualize and even measure versus just diving in and shaping it blind. So in the middle of the board, this is our bevel, and I almost came down to the bottom of the top planks, just to the seam between the top and the landing strips. And that's going to be about as far as we go. At the nose and the tail, we'll show you, but that bevel might be narrower where the board is thinner and the radius of the rail is going to be smaller. So the bevel is going to change around the board depending on the thickness of the board. Okay, now this bevel is finished. Essentially we're going to go back and do another set of bevels that splits the difference between the deck and this bevel, and it splits the difference between the rail and this bevel. And as we're getting closer to round, each bevel that we create is going to get smaller and smaller. So while this one is, let's call it 1/2 inch wide, these next bevels are going to be narrower. Hard to say how much, but we're going to go for it. So once again, I'm trying to be very consistent so that I'm creating a bevel down the whole length of the board. So I split that one. I go down here, split that one, and it's getting close. So just keep in mind, you know, this is a nerve-wracking part for a lot of people, but there's quite a bit of wood here that you can shape into. You want to make sure that this deck rolls smoothly into the rail. It doesn't come off and have kind of a hard transition. Up here in the nose, where the board is much thinner, this bevel that we put, the first bevel on your planks, matches again the rail below it. So the board's thin and the rail hasn't started to roll in yet. So our top planks basically are more vertical to match the rail below it again. So on my secondary bevel, again, kind of at a 45 to the top planks, this one's just going to be narrower than it is in the middle of the board because the radius is going to be smaller in the end.